So this is my third trip to Europe, my first trip to the UK and Scotland, and I'm enjoying it very much. I've learned a couple of things. I got here Monday, and I learned very quickly, if you see one of these, expect weird things to happen. I learned that watching American television, right? Or watching a BBC show that shows up on American, I don't know. I'm actually not a Whovian, but you know, I'm already getting bad reviews. People are on that going, oh, nope. No, thank you. I've enjoyed my visit to Glasgow so far. I've found people very friendly here. This is actually a friendlier place than the place I live, which is called the Friendship State. So, not sure what to make of that. I need to start out with a couple of disclaimers before I proceed further. This is me speaking. This is Ruth Holloway standing up here completely by herself. I do not represent my employer, past, present, or future. I do not represent my family, some nebulous community, or anyone else. It is possible, indeed likely, that some people will disagree with what I have to say in the next 40 or so minutes. And that's okay. They may even disagree with me stridently. And that's all right, as long as they're civil about it. Why do I do this stuff? Mark talks about me being such an empathetic person and listening to people a lot and talking about how important that is in our lives. Why do I do this? And I got asked that question a while back, and I really hadn't thought about it. But this from the late Michael Clark Duncan, I'm tired. I turned 50 this summer, and I'm tired of people being ugly to each other. It wears on my soul to see people who should be caring for each other not doing so. Simple enough? There it is. Let's talk about discussion. The way that we do discussion has changed in my lifetime. You know, it went from when I was a kid, if you wanted to read a variety of opinions about something, you looked at the letters to the editor in the newspaper. And they had to talk about a previous article or a previous letter or some issue that was important to the community, and there were editors who wouldn't let through really inflammatory stuff that didn't belong in their paper. So you had to write your letter in a very civil way and in a very concise and clear way, or it didn't get published, and your opinion was sent to the bin. Right? Nowadays, that's not the case. With the internet, with everything else, all the technology and closeness of the world that we have now, it's turned into this. Our communications have turned into a dumpster fire. Social media, which isn't very social. When I hear social, I think, sit down and have a drink with somebody. Share dinner, talk about what's going on in your lives. Social media isn't that. Professional forums, and again, I stick quotes around professional, because I see some really unprofessional behavior on boards that are supposed to be professionals. And if you think I'm talking about you personally sitting there, I might be. News aggregators, Reddit. Okay, does anybody really love Reddit? Entertainment value, if nothing else, right? To watch the crazy going on, right? And there are a tiny, tiny number of subreddits that have actually managed to not be a dumpster fire. But most of them, yeah. Many of the American newspaper websites are disabling comments now because their comment section has turned into these kind of dumpster fires. And even in person, we have gotten nastier to each other. And it feels like it can overwhelm you. This tsunami of bad vibes. All right? And to people like me who are empaths, it's almost painful reading online and hearing this kind of behavior. Why? How did this happen? How did we get here? Well, this is at the core of it. When I was a kid, you didn't hear opinions from the far side of the planet. You heard opinions from people in your local area. You heard close-in opinions. And they typically were the people who had time to screw around with writing letters to the editor. They weren't your average working Joe who has a half an hour to log on and flame everybody. We have a greater diversity of opinion visible now than we've ever had before. If you put a note on any one of the mailing lists in Perl, odds are pretty good that somebody from another country will be the first responder. Because we're all over. And that's true on so many fora. Your respondent probably doesn't know you. Probably doesn't know your life situation. Probably doesn't know what's going on in your town. And we have allowed, with the technology, more opinions to be heard. This tends to have a polarizing effect over time. It creates an environment of us versus them. The locals get this, but these foreigners who are showing up, how many times have we heard that in the last couple of years? These foreigners. Let me tell you a hint. All of us are foreigners somewhere, right? You are that foreigner to somebody else. So what do we do about it? Well, I want to talk first about what communities can do about it. And communities could be a lot of things. It could be the Perl community. Perl. Thank you. Oh, Mark, they're still awake. I haven't put them to sleep yet. I'm working on it. It could be your employer, your working team. It could be civic organizations or your neighbors or any group of where two or more are gathered. Yeah? A community looks like what communities look like. Anytime you've got two or more people, you probably have a community of some sort. And communities can isolate themselves from this kind of thing. They can help insulate themselves, if you will, from this kind of drama in a few ways. And one thing that will do that is to deliberately take time to build cohesiveness in the community by developing a collective vision. Now, in the business world, we hear a lot about mission and vision and these kind of blurby, managerese sorts of words. And technical people tend to view those with a little bit of disdain, and in some cases, rightly so. But think about that community and how you can build a vision together. And to do that, the first thing you have to do is leave your ego at the door. I don't care what you've done for the Perl community in the past. Any of you. I don't care what you've done for the Perl community in the past. Now, some of you have done a great deal for the community, not the least of whom these two people sitting on the end of the front row over here. Thank you. But in terms of developing our collective vision for what we want this community to look like, that doesn't matter, because it's not about technical issues. It's not about running conferences. It's not about being at every single one of them, Jeff. It's about who are you and what do you want this community to look like. I don't care what you've done in the past. Please leave your ego at the door. Not interested. Let's talk about what everybody wants the community to be. And I underlined and bolded that for a reason. We want this community to be a place where people can come and learn about Perl, build their skills, network with other professionals who do this. Heck, maybe find a job, maybe find someone you love, maybe, who knows. But be a place where people are safe, where people can come and be part of this community and be welcome. I didn't say anything about what I want this community to do. Now, what the community will do as a larger community, develop Perl 5 and Perl 6. Keep them excellent and relevant in the technical world. Be a place and set up the tools needed for us to collaborate across all the time zones and all the cultures across the world. We have things we need to do together. And to sit down and have some time talking about what that looks like, rather than allowing it to merely develop organically, helps insulate against the trolls that will inevitably show up. And this is really difficult. When you have very diffuse communities that are diverse, global, it's kind of hard. How do you get everybody together for a meeting when you have members of your community in every time zone on Earth? How do you do that? It's hard, I get it. But it is so worthwhile. And in Pearl's case, we have a very chunky community. You know, we have Pearl 5 porters, and we have some Pearl 6 enthusiasts, and we have the dancer people, and we have the mojo people, and everybody's got their own little niche. cPan testers? Everybody's got their own little piece of the community that they have a passion for and participate in, and that's great. But it makes it hard for us to develop a collective vision because each of these chunks needs to buy into it as a group, needs to participate in that conversation. And that's hard. But it's totally worth doing. Once you've done that, it's important to codify that. Write that conversation down. Write it down. I'm going to say a word that to some of you, or a phrase that to some of you is probably a dirty word. Some of this will look like a code of conduct. Is that a problem for you? The door's that away. Just saying. Write it down. Human memory is undependable. It is fallible. That's why we work on computers, right? Your constituency will change over time. I'm 50 years old. Eventually, I will retire. At some point. Probably won't write any Perl after some point or another. The next day, they may put me in a box. But, you know, we'll find out. People change. Jeff gets a job where he's got to learn PHP, and he goes away and does that. He's no longer part of the community. The constituency changes over time. So having that conversation written down so that new people can hear that is important. And don't be afraid to be detailed. I see people who want, particularly codes of conduct, to be very, very nebulous and very unclear. Don't be afraid to be detailed and specific. And let me tell you a reason why, okay? I see a lot of white male faces. That's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing on its own, no. But the faces that aren't, that are around you, need to feel welcome. And in many places on Earth, including in my own country, we are not. And it doesn't matter if you're a woman, or you're a person of color, or an LGBT person, or a person of a faith other than the predominant one where you are, you will have times where you feel distinctly unwelcome. And putting in that code and putting in that conversation that people like this are welcome here, even if you don't have any right now, is important so that they will come. All right, the job I currently have has in their equal opportunity hiring statement that regardless of gender identity or expression, you're welcome here. I live in a state where it is perfectly legal to fire me for being transgender. And all I can do is say thank you and walk out the door. Perfectly lawful. To some of you in Europe, that sounds crazy, and it should. And it is crazy, and welcome to the States. But it's perfectly lawful. I would not be working at cPanel if they didn't have that in their hiring statement, period. Because I wouldn't have ever applied for a Texas company. Because I wouldn't ever want to work in Texas for a company that doesn't. Right? Making sure you specify those things and say, you are welcome here, we don't care, is important. Being specific helps. Be gentle with the newcomers. Oh dear. How many communities have you seen where somebody asks a question very innocently, maybe they've been reading for a week and trying to learn things, and they ask a question, and they get 50 responses back, all of which are, read the FAQ, damn it. I see lots of nodding heads. Yeah, we see that all the time. Be gentle with your newcomers. Provide tools for them to find that. Make sure it's really visible. Make sure that everything they need to know to be a valuable contributor is published, is accessible, is visible, is easy to find. All right? This stuff's hard. I get that. It is challenging. It's complicated. There's a lot of work to do. And the more diverse and diffuse your community is, and Pearl is, I think, one of the most diffuse I participate in, the harder that is. It is difficult. But that's the easy part. Are you afraid yet? Okay. Thank you. I'm going to ask you to do something even harder. Look at yourself. Ooh. Now she's getting serious. Spending time, okay, let me tell you a little story. As a transgender person in America, the standards of care dictate that before I can access the medical resources needed to change my body to match what's going on in my head, I have to spend 3 to 6 months with a therapist making sure I'm not crazy some other way. You laugh. It's true, right? And so every week for about 6 months, I spent 3 hours with a therapist. We spent a whole month talking about my sexuality. We spent weeks and weeks and weeks talking about what I would have to deal with from other humans after transition. All right? So I had a lot of opportunity for self-examination, more perhaps than many people ever do. I had never done that much in my life prior to that. I was 42 years old, and for the first time, really, I was looking at myself in a mirror very closely. And you take your soul out every week, and you wash it, and you dry it, and you fold it, and you put it away again. That's hard. And many people never, ever do that. But the Roman philosopher Mencius said about 300 years before the Common Era that there is no greater delight than to be conscious of sincerity on self-examination. The important thing is to be truthful with yourself. And that's the hardest thing. It's the hardest part of this, is being honest with yourself. So how am I contributing to the problem? Well, I'm not. Are you sitting silent while it happens? Then you are. Idleness is an action. Inaction is a choice. Inaction is an action. Is your inaction contributing to the problem? It might be. It's time for some self-examination. What can I do to make it better? Don't give up. You always can do something. Now, for those of you who kind of enjoy that sort of trollery, and I know there's probably at least one in here, doing nothing is something you could do to make it better. Just saying, right? Don't troll. Don't be a troll. Now, this stuff is really, really hard. And being honest with yourself is harder still. But in terms of insulating yourself from this kind of trollery and rage and hatred and bad feelings, it's really necessary. Okay, Ruthie, enough with all of the blah, 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 touchy-feely stuff. You need a toolbox. We're tool users, right? Well, except for Larry, who's a tool inventor, right?
I use tools for that.
He uses tools for tool invention, yes. We need tools for better communication. Let me give you some. That's what I'm here for. Okay, all of you that raised your hand when I said you were here last year for the Pearl Conference in Amsterdam, yeah, you can tune out for a minute because you've heard all this before. I wouldn't mind if you wanted to hear it again. Empathy is really, really important. It's really, really important. We need to start caring as a species more about the people around us than we did yesterday, or we will die miserable and alone because somebody will eventually get mad enough to push that button and only roaches live on this earth. And you need to start caring about the strangers around you, regardless of what they look like or who they worship or who they sleep with or what color they are or their gender or anything. It doesn't matter. You need to start caring about the strangers around you because bad stuff happens when you don't. You know, Mark kind of jokingly started talking about the terrorist attack in London yesterday. I'm curious to see how a lack of empathy may have played a role because it always does. You just have to look hard enough. This is a key to the better communication piece. Understand that other person is as passionate about the community or the topic at hand as you are, or they wouldn't be there. All right, so somebody's on P5P and they're raising a stink. They obviously care more about P5P than I do because I am not on P5P. Right? They care about it enough to sign up for the list and be on it and participate. Don't denigrate that. Don't put that down. It is valuable participation in the community, even if they're wrong. You remember that thing about egos? Leave your ego at the door? It applies on lists, too, by the way. Leave your ego at the door. Don't care what you did yesterday. What are you doing today? Hey, that's pretty cool. Let me help you do it better. What would I think if someone said that to me? All right. Every religion on earth, every significant religion on earth anyway, has something like this as one of its top 3 core tenets. Every one of them. And even before, and of course the predominant one in the West is Christianity, and they, do unto others. We know that, the golden rule, right? But, even 400 years before that, Socrates said it in a non-religious context, do not do to others what angers you, if done to you by others. All right, the Rabbi Hillel was a contemporary of Christ, I'm told, and a man came to him and said he would convert to Judaism if Hillel could explain the whole of the Torah while standing on one foot. And Hillel thought for a moment, he stood on one foot, and he said, that which is abhorrent to you, do not do to others. That is the whole of the Torah, the rest is commentary, go and study it. Every faith on earth has this, and people of non-faith can recognize it as a smart thing to do. Treat other people the way you want to be treated. Why do we not get that? I mean, the women's rights movement in America is largely fought against on the premise that we as women will treat the men the way they've been treating us for hundreds of years. That's not in fact the case, so relax. It's okay. We just want to be treated like you are. Mark referred to this, talk less, listen more. Stephen Covey said it this way, seek first to understand, then to be understood. If you charge into an argument and the first words out of your mouth is you need to understand that I'm right, and you need to understand that I'm wrong, that you're wrong, you're not going to get very far. And that's not how you would want to be treated, is it? Okay, just check it. I don't know how well this is going to play in this audience. Y'all know who this is? Yeah, the Americans all know who this is. Fred Rogers. Fred Rogers ran a children's program in America for many, many, many years. A very, very popular show called Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He was an educator and a minister and a child psychologist. And the show was very carefully, very deliberately done in every one of its aspects. All the sweaters he wore, his wife knitted for him. It was just this interesting story. The man is this incredibly detailed individual who, for the last 50 years of his life, weighed within 5 pounds of 143 because he was that internally knowledgeable. He kept track of himself that well. Now, in 1997, he was given a Daytime Emmy Lifetime Achievement Award for his work on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And like most of these in a televised awards show, he was given a certain amount of time to get up and thank people. Right? He was given a block of time to get up and thank people for the award and the people who got him there. And he stood up and he thanked all the people who had believed in his program in the early days, and he thanked his wife for being such a patient soul and putting up with him all these years. And then he turned it around. And he said, all of us have special ones who loved us into being. Would you take, along with me, 10 seconds to think of the people who have helped you become who you are? Those who cared about you and wanted what was best for you in life. 10 seconds. I'll watch the time. And what followed is the most uncomfortable 10 seconds on television ever. The camera turns to the audience, and Joan Crawford sitting in the front row in tears. So all of us have people in our careers who have gotten us where we are. Mentors, the person who hired you for your first job, not knowing that you had any skill at all. Colleagues who have given you sound advice from time to time. I'm looking at one of my mentors right now in the back. People that you care about in the community. Let's take 10 seconds and think about those people and appreciate them. I'll watch the time. Uncomfortable, isn't it? Take 10 seconds today and do that. Appreciate that person. You don't need to tell anybody who it was, but appreciate them for just a few seconds every day. And then your communications with them will change. Then start appreciating that person that's hard to get along with because of the lessons they've taught you about how to not be hard to get along with. Right? Encourage teamwork. Oh, I hear this one from managers all the time. We want to encourage collaboration. How do you do that? Oh, you can put all kinds of insane systems in place, and you can do mad things, but it's really not that hard. When you're talking about your problem, use I. I have a problem. Jeff, can I use you as a demo dummy for a moment? So Jeff has contributed a piece of code and committed it to master that breaks something I'm working on. I have a problem, Jeff. You did this thing. All right? That opens up the possibility of us collaborating to fix it. Where if I said, you have screwed my life up with your commit, what on earth were you thinking?
You're welcome.
If you use I when describing your problem, you give the other person an opportunity to participate in it, to realize that there's a problem, and then ask for we or us to solve it. Jeff, you contributed this piece of code. It's in master. Somebody's downloaded it by now, so it's there. How can we work together to make sure that we both get what we want? How hard is that? Really? Come on, we're professionals. Why can't we do that? But I see it happen over and over again. You've contributed this piece of code, and it was a bad decision, and you're a ruined person, and everything you ever did was dumb. I see some giggles, and they know who I'm talking about. One of several, in fact. Give more credit to other people than you think they deserve. Now, I can't give enough credit to Mark Keating. All right? He, not only has he, with a great team, put together this conference, he has also been a dear friend and a wonderful colleague. And I can't say enough nice things about him. It's really hard to give him more credit than I think he deserves, but I am determined to try. And you should always do that. I had a colleague who, years ago, who, bless his heart, his code always needed work. When it came to review, it always got kicked back. I can't remember a time for more than 3 years of working with him that I didn't kick one of his back when I reviewed the code. Every time. And bless him, neither one of us is at that job anymore, and he's moved on to greener fields and other languages and is somebody else's problem now. But I have to give him credit because he kept trying, he kept learning, he kept growing, and he never made the same mistake twice. How hard is that to do? Why do we struggle with that? Find ways to give more credit than you think other people deserve. Logical fallacies, I hear these all the time. People think this is language for philosophers. It's not. These are some fallacies that have to do with what you're talking about. If it's A or B, an argument to moderation when there is no middle position is not valid. False dilemmas, is it A or B only? Or are there third or fourth or fifth options? We all know these things, right? Anybody not understand what's going on this slide?
I believe you put all those up there.
But at least these have something to do with the topic at hand. These do not. The red herrings, if my projector will move, there it goes. The appeal to authority. Larry says it is so, and therefore it is so. We're denying the fact that Larry might be wrong. Now, it's remotely possible that he might be wrong about something sometime.
It's happened once or twice.
All right. Appeal to emotion. I really, really want it that way. Appeals to tradition. It's always been that way. Argumentum ad populum. Everybody wants it this way. Even if you haven't polled everybody. You can't do that unless you have actually polled all persons. There are 7 billion of us on the planet. Get to work. Naturalistic fallacy. This is the right way. That way is unnatural. LGBT people hear that one all the time. Tu quoque. You do it, and you're arguing against it. So your argument is invalid. No, maybe I realize I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing. Maybe I've had this moment of self-reflection and realized I need to improve who I am. It has happened. But even these are not as bad as ad hominem attacks, when you're just attacking the speaker themselves and who they are. Whoops, back up. Abusive fallacy, that's just heaping abuse on somebody. I won't even give you an example of that. You just need to go look at the history of a couple of lists and you'll know. Appeal to motive is when I say, you're arguing for this and you have some hidden agenda, don't you? And I bet your hidden agenda is something that's actually not good for the community. And then there's this one, and I see this one from people who feel like their contributions have merited the ability for them to stand up and say this. Argumentum ergo decido is, I said it and therefore it is true. What? What did I say about your contributions yesterday? I don't care. What are you doing right now? Let's talk about memes. And not funny ones like this. There was a meme going around a couple of months ago in the States on Facebook and elsewhere, and it was a photograph of our president getting off of Air Force One. He's getting off an aircraft and fixing to walk down the steps that have been pulled up to the side of the plane. And the text was, don't you wish, how many times have you wished this guy would fall down those stairs? But they didn't use guy. They used a strongly negative term that is an obscene word, and I shan't use it. My answer is never. Now, I disagree very stridently with our president on a number of policies. He's doing things that endanger me and the people I love, that put my life at risk. However, I will not call him dirty names, period, because I don't do that. And I also do not believe in wishing ill on others, even if I disagree with them. I had somebody call me on that and say, BS. I said, no, it's true. I got out of the habit of dissing on people like that a long time ago. Now, I'll tease Jeff, and I'll yank Matt's chain, but that's friends. I won't bad talk a stranger. Not like that. We need to develop more people who have that attitude. Come to think of it, I've never heard you do it either. Either one of you. And I'm not surprised by that a bit, knowing you both. All right, you don't have to agree with somebody to not treat them well. You don't have to agree with somebody to treat them human. Just because there are 7 billion of us doesn't mean that we can mistreat some percentage of them. What does hate do anyway? Has hate solved any problem anywhere at any time in history? No, not once. We don't need thicker skins. I hear that over and over again in these dumpster fire discussions. You need thicker skins. We do not need thicker skins. We need softer hearts. I said this last year, and I'll say it again, and I'll keep saying it until my last breath. Thicker skins means more distance between human hearts, more not like me, more us versus them, more hatred and warfare and violence. We don't need thicker skin. We need less hate, not more. And the way to get that You can build some of it into your communities, but realize that that's difficult. You can also build that into yourself. And the way to do that, we've been talking about, is empathy and understanding each other and stopping and listening and thinking positive things about even the people who annoy you. The true hero, the Dalai Lama says, is one who conquers his own anger and hatred. If you can lick that, you can lick anything. There will be naysayers. I read the reviews after last year. I'm one of those crazy speakers who actually reads their reviews and pays attention to them. Can't not do that because I'm an empath. I care about what you are thinking right now. In fact, more than you might realize. But there's always naysayers. They'll say things like, well, that really doesn't happen here. These bad things don't happen here. I had a guy, I was talking about codes of conduct at another conference, and I had a guy come up and he said, well, the community I participate in hasn't had any of that happen. And I said, is there more than 2 people in it? He said, yeah, it was about 100. I said, are any of them women? He said, yeah, then it's happened. Sit down. I have no empathy for somebody who says it doesn't happen. They're blind. They're missing something. Bad stuff is happening all around us. And if you just open your eyes, you'll see it. And then it's a decision whether or not you're going to do something about it. It binds me in some way. I hear this about codes of conduct all the time. It binds me. And when I hear that, I go, well, okay, so it binds you. Who precisely are you planning on harassing or molesting so I can warn them? Right? Oh, well, I'm not. Well, then it doesn't bind you, does it? Didn't mean to pick on you. Okay. I'm not included in it. Sorry, straight white guys, I hear this from you all the time. Yes, you are. Regardless of gender or gender identity, includes men. Regardless of race, includes white people. You really are included. Trust me on this. This is new. This is a change. All right. Anybody that's ever worked for a United States company since 1963, this is not new. The Equal Opportunity Employment Act and its successors set forth a code of conduct. You're used to operating under a code of conduct. Your employer, regardless of where they are, has some expectations about your behavior. And if you don't match up to that, what happens? The door's that way. We're not new with codes of conduct. We're just new at codifying them. Some of it's been implicit for a long time, and it's a good time now to make it explicit. Let's say so. You won't make any difference. I get told this all the time. Ruth, you get up there and you work hard and you blood, sweat, and tears this stuff and you talk about this and it's not going to make a lick of difference. I don't care. I don't care. I will pay any price to make sure that one person cares more about the people around them tomorrow than they did today. Any price is worth it. There's going to be some name calling. Social justice warrior. I'm like, hand me my sword. Bring it. Don't care. This one happened last year after my Amsterdam talk. I got called a snowflake. There was an attendee on Twitter who said, well, I had hoped that the Pearl community had not been infested by snowflakes. I guess that's too bad. John Cleese said this about a month ago, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. Yes, I've heard this word. He was talking about snowflakes. I think sociopaths use this in an attempt to discredit the notion of empathy. And I went, thank you, John Cleese. I love you. I'm capturing that, and it's going on my slides right now. And maybe you find yourself as one of those naysayers in some part, one of those name callers. I have a message for you if you're one of those people from the Me Too movement, from Black Lives Matter, from almost every LGBTQ person you know, from the environmental movement, from everyone who cares about the well-being of the people around them, from everyone who wants all of humanity to have a peaceful, healthy, happy future. You want to call snowflakes? Fine. Winter is coming. Winter is coming. Thank you. More and more communities are adopting codes of conduct. More and more communities are adopting codes of accessibility. More and more communities are standing up and saying, we're done with the old way of doing things where everybody was not treated fairly. You're not going to stop it, not by calling me names, not by calling anybody names. You're not going to stop it. All you're going to do is look less and less relevant, and in time, this is what you're going to hear. Goodbye. You're going to cross that line one too many times, and the community is showing you the door. Problem with that? Leave early. So for the rest of us, a challenge. Making things better is hard. It's hard work. Now, any person who routinely keynotes will tell you that keynote speaking is hard. Yeah, it is. It's a challenge. It's a lot of work. Constructing talks and all the stuff you have to go through and travel and stinky hotel rooms and all the things that you have to put up with, it's a pain. It's hard. But a far harder task is that I am setting to you. Look at yourself and see how you can improve the communication of the communities that you inhabit. How can you help them? What can you do individually to make things better? Even that much. Even that much. Because if I do that much, and Jeff does this much, and Mark does this much because he's super and can do twice as much as the rest of us, and Wendy does this much, and Liz does this much, and Todd does this much, how much change have we made? What can we do to improve things ourselves and then get together and do it in a group? This thought from the end of last season of Doctor Who, I think, when somebody said, Ruth, you've got to see this. You got to see this after it aired. And so I went and found it and looked. Never be cruel. Never be cowardly. Remember, hate is always foolish and love is always wise. Always try to be nice and never fail to be kind. That is so brilliant. Some writer aced that one. Never fail to be kind, even when you disagree the most. Do your best to be kind. I want to thank you for your time today. I want to send you away with my best wishes for you and the people you love. I hope you have a wonderful conference. And obviously, if you want to talk about anything that I've been talking about, I'm here until Friday. I would love to sit and chat with you. Doesn't matter if you agree with me or not. Thank you very much for your time. Go in peace. Mark?